Great.
All right.
All right. Terrific. And I'm just going to pull up the agenda. First, we'll do a roll call, and then I'll review the agenda. We'll provide some time for public comment next. So Steve Douglas.
Here.
Kevin Thusius.
Right here.
Andy Hartman.
Present.
John Brandt is not here and will not be attending tonight's meeting. He's out of town. And I am here. So 4 out of 5, not bad. All right. Tonight's agenda is, assuming we don't have any public comment, we will, and I'll pause there. Brian, I don't see anybody. Do we expect anybody?
Nope, I didn't get any feedback from anyone planning to join.
Okay, all right. Then we'll dive into general business. We'll have some time for committee member report outs and updates. We will review and possibly approve the agenda, the minutes from March and April. And then we'll dive into the continuation of discussion around our sustainability plan. And then talk about research needs for the Village Hall Police Station. I'm going to wrap us up as I have for the last several months. 7 o'clock is when I turn into a pumpkin. The fairy godmother does not babysit past 7 p.m. So I will try to wrap us up at 7 o'clock and have us wrapped up. So with that, I'm going to move us into general business and committee member report outs and updates. Does anybody have a report out or update to share?
I just want to say, nice to meet you, Steve. Good to see you, Brian, Kevin, Melissa. Just happy to be here, and let's get some sustainability going, eh? So
Glad
thanks.
you're here, Andy.
Nice to meet you too, Andy. And Brian too. I missed last month. I was out of town, so did not get to introduce myself to you. Looking forward to meeting you in person one day.
Likewise.
Terrific. I've got a couple of updates. First, just mention of No Mow May. We are now in May. We've seen a number of signs. I don't know how many I've seen across the community, but at least a dozen. And we're getting some good media. So we've been on channel 27, I think channel 3000, and a couple of write-ups in blogs. Virginia, was it, Steve? A Master Gardener program in Virginia.
It was outside of Charlottesville, their Master Gardener program. Not sure how they landed on us, other than they probably heard about that program, Googled it, and we bubbled to the top. And at which point they really liked Andrew's sign that he made and wanted to use it as a graphic. And there was a bunch of back and forth, probably offline, that you guys didn't see, but she was very, very generous. It was great for Andrew to get his work, kind of out there. And she did, I don't know if you guys saw it, I think I forwarded it to the committee, but she did a super nice write-up on No Mow May in their, they call it the Garden Shed, it's their newsletter. She did a lot of research on where it was from. So I think there's a lot of linkable kinds of things that we have going on there from her that maybe we could tie into in our website or our resource page or however we landed.
Yeah, it was a great article. I think you sent it to the full committee, Steve.
Yeah.
Brian, any idea how many signs are still out there in circulation or available?
I should have looked that up before tonight. What I can tell you is I think the last time that I looked at our board, we had, I want to say, over 20 people that had already made donations for signs within the village. Or honestly, the day the first news story ran within the Madison market, we had to have had 10 people stop in that day to come get signs. So it was pretty cool. The timing was great.
That's awesome. That's great.
Perfect. I mean, in addition, obviously, to the local press too, it was on NPR twice. Mary heard it run twice. So I mean, that's a national, thing. Was it it wasn't Wall Street Journal, but it was another pretty big publication, a national one, that was talking about, put away your mowers and all this. So yeah, it's getting a lot of press.
Very cool. Anything else on No Mow May that folks have to report out?
I assume we'll talk next month. Well, let's see, next month is June. We'll need a debrief.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a lot more resources to connect to, and we need to do some sort of follow-up.
Yeah.
I think we promised Jay and the board some sort of post evaluation, even if that's a simple survey to people who are willing to sign up and maybe answer a few questions.
I'm double booked tonight because there's I had hoped to make a pitch to the scouts that are meeting tonight, that one project that we could use some help on is somebody mapping where the various residences are that people are using the signs, and just kind of creating a quick map of where they are and maybe a few pictures so that we can compare it to next year, and maybe even just, get some information from them.
It's a great idea. I wish I knew
can't
somebody in
remember-
Scouts.
If only I knew somebody in Scouts. Does anybody know anybody in Scouts? If somebody forwarded this to me, and I can't now remember who it was, but a request, maybe I think it was Michael Pomykowski, a request from the professors in Appleton, Lawrence University, because Appleton is sort of where this started in the US, for community scientists, for people studying what kind of flowers you have in your lawn if you're doing No Mow May, and how that compares to your neighbors. And so I'm not really sure what we can do with that at this point. Maybe it's something we can post on our Facebook, on the village's Facebook page. But I'm just trying to, think about additional ways to gather data, because we are talking about this as a pilot project. And if we want to come back to the village board next year, we'd want some data to back up the claim that it's actually doing what we think it is.
I'm curious so Michael got that actually from the professor at Lawrence who did that really nice study in Appleton. And I've been on those links, and they're really nice. They're very accessible YouTubes, how to plot your lawn, and how to, do a bee count, and how to, identify species, and just write it down. I mean, nothing fancy, but it's very good and well-directed and accessible, just like his main article about the Appleton project. I thought was so accessible. So I just think we build out the website resources, make sure we just keep logging these. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at them tonight, and they're super easy to digest. I'm just curious. So Michael got that, I think, as a village trustee. Like, how, I don't know how the professor found, because he said, hey, as a No Mow May community organizer, you might want to be interested in this. And so, he somehow found us, which is really cool.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the two places that I could see posting that call for community scientists would be the village's Facebook page, and the village's, our sustainability page. Brian, that goes back to you though, or Becky Ward. Do you feel like either of those, getting those resources into one or both of those places, is doable?
I think that would be completely doable. In fact, I want to say that the sign up sheet that we had for people with the signs does ask for their address too. So I think we should have some data as far as who's got signs where within the village. But yeah, as far as posting on the village Facebook page, I don't think that's a problem. And if we need to do it on the little news scroll bar within the village website itself, that would be fine too.
Okay, cool. That's a cool idea. Unless anybody have anything else on No Mow May, because I'm going to move us along otherwise.
If you do a study, I would just suggest you don't look for just signs. Look for the yards that aren't mowed, whether they're passive participants or active. I think there's plenty just on the street over here that could be participating by apathy or by intent. So I think, but I think I'd count them if they're continue to not mow for the rest of the month.
Brian, I'm curious, I did not see a sign at the village hall for no mow May. And I'm wondering how we change that.
That's a great point, and we we thought of that ourselves just the other day. That's something that I think we could probably push for the board. I don't think we could just run out there and post one, but I think we could ask the board if we can participate. And I think you're correct, and we asked, and I don't know that we ever formally, made a village commitment on that front. But I do think that's warranted.
Cool. All right. Well, do you need anything from the sustainability committee to do that?
I don't think a letter of support would hurt.
Because I'm also wondering if the village, I guess what we did officially, formally, is we suspended the ordinance, the mowing ordinance. So there probably isn't anything saying that the village is participating in no mow May. We just suspended the ordinance. I'm just wondering if there's a way to obviate that and not have to go and slow the process down to get a sign out by going to the board.
Sure. Let me look into that one. I'll see. I'll give you an update. I'll check around and see what I can find out when I get in tomorrow.
I mean, couldn't we just here tonight just approve like a recommendation to the board to do that, just to get it on the agenda potentially and just get the ball going?
That seems like it would be okay. Kevin, yeah, you're unmuting. What do you think?
I don't think it's a board function at all. I think it's a staff function, Brian, and I think you can make the call yourself. And if you take a little bit of heat or get a question, then you can maybe change it. But all we're asking for is passive, to not mow. We're not asking for anything special. We're asking for something to not happen. So I think stick out the sign, and that's my opinion. But you have Jay to answer to. So
Yeah. Well, I don't.
I would just say, instead of avoiding the board, I just put it out there and say, Jay, we're going to do no mow May on the property, on the village hall, and see if he has a question.
Okay.
I think that's what I'd suggest, because the sustainability committee has come out in support of the concept. And I think that sort of in my mind implies that we're extending that to village property as well. So I'm in favor of trying to get it done faster and, beg forgiveness rather than ask permission.
Yeah, I agree with all those. Your options are, that's the way to go.
I think we lost Steve. So let's, I don't know what happened to him, but hopefully he'll rejoin. So I don't think there's anything else that we need him for at the moment. So I'm going to move us past no mow May now that I said I was going to do that and then brought us back to the village hall thing. So the other small update that I've got is that Mike Rupiper, I'm not sure how to say his name, maybe somebody else who knows Carpsey would know him. Okay, is willing and interested in coming to a sustainability committee meeting in the future to talk about the Black Earth Creek Watershed Green Infrastructure Plan. And in particular, he was approached by John Brandt on our sustainability committee to talk about what we might do with regard to kind of keeping the Black Earth Creek passable, canoeable, kayak, more specifically probably kayakable, but cleaning it up and keeping debris from creating any kind of blockages. And so that was the conversation that he had with Mike Rupiper, who I think now is more interested in a larger conversation about just the green infrastructure plan for Black Earth Creek. That's about all I can say without having much more background, but perhaps somebody else, I don't know, Brian, if you've got any more background on that conversation or others, but just kind of flagging it for a future conversation.
Well, I spoke with Mike on an unrelated topic with some zoning issue in the village that I was working on, and kind of got an introduction to him. And so we had a nice long Zoom meeting talking about that, and then just kind of the, I'm new here and just kind of bringing me up to speed of a couple of those types of issues. That was one of the topics that we discussed during that meeting. So I think, you know, when he came out, he was at Trout Days, obviously spoke with John and brought the issue up again. So I think it's important to him. And I mean, if you're on board, he's very well spoken, very intelligent. I think it would be an asset to the committee to have him participate in some fashion and talk about that and see what we can do to support it.
So I'd like to recommend that he had some dates for when, you know, future meetings that he could make. So I'd like to extend an invitation to him. I mean, this is actually on our sustainability plan. It's the 4th priority, working with CARPC to reduce the threat of flooding. And so this is related to what's already on our plan. I think it makes a lot of sense to invite him to a future meeting. So I'm happy to respond to him or work with you, Brian, to respond to him, to bring him into a conversation with the committee at some point in the future.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else on that? Okay. Moving and grooving. The next item on our agenda is discussion and possible approval of 2 sets of minutes, March 9th and April 12th, Sustainability Committee meeting minutes. And probably I think the best thing here is just to approve them individually. And so if anybody would like to make a motion to approve the March 9th minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 9th Sustainability Committee meeting minutes.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
That
I'll
was
second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. April 12th meeting minutes. I do have one correction, Brian, and that's just the spelling of John Barant's last name. It's got a T at the end.
I knew that. Okay, my oversight.
With that correction in mind, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from April 12th, 2022 Sustainability Committee.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
I better second them, though I wasn't there.
Yeah, Andy wasn't there for the other one, but
I thought
we're
so.
just gonna roll with
There'll
it.
be many
We'll just-
options,
Gotta
right?
move this on. Move it on. This is ad hoc committee. We can be we can
A
start
little
from
fast
here.
and loose with the rules here.
All right.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to discussion of the sustainability plan implementation. So for that, it might be easiest. I'm gonna drop a link into the chat. I can also share my screen, but let me first just try chatting out the link so folks can check that out on their own. If it's easier, let me know. I'm happy to share my screen and pull that up. But this is the handy dandy spreadsheet that Kevin pulled together for us that lists our priorities. What we agreed on a previous meeting is that we would take these chunk by kind of chunk and just start reviewing them and talk about how we can move these ahead. So I'm just kind of curious, is there any kind of update that we can is there any kind of update on the solar farm at this point? I know that we were not able to acquire the land that we had hoped for the price that we had hoped. Has there been any other movement, or is there anything that the committee can do to move that ahead? Or are you at liberty to say?
You're asking me, obviously. I have not had any solid discussions about where that project stands and revisiting that project since arriving with the village.
Little summary for you, Brian. We were cruising up with one property, and then that one kind of went away, and then we had a second option, and that one kind of went cruising up. We did an appraisal on that one. They didn't accept the appraised value, and you maybe came in toward the end of that. And so now I think if we want to go revisit this, it's back to what property?
Back to pulling up that map that we were
Pulling up
working
maps,
with
so
Bill.
if we want to try this
Mhm.
again and push it forward, we'll have to go to maps. And then Brian, we were using consulting firm, somebody from, was it Edge? Not Edge. They do telecommunications, whatever the consulting firm was in Middleton, and they were running some pretty basic I don't know what you call it, simulations, I guess, of sites that would say whether or not it was economical to do a solar farm on a particular property. Once we had come up with a couple ideas, so that's how we got to that point, and now we are sort of back to not quite square one, but not far in front of square one.
Okay, I'm just gonna flag that for a future call then.
I would think it need to be in a topic, and I think we need to come in well prepared for that discussion again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you taking notes? I can't flip back and forth. You taking notes then, Melissa?
I just added a little, at least kind of a reminder in our priorities document, in our priorities spreadsheet.
All right, I'm just gonna change this to April or May. I mean. Okay.
Okay. This next one is on me, but I promised that I would draft a letter for the Sustainability Committee to review on kind of our proposal, our recommendations around the chicken ordinance, and then send that to Plan Commission. So that is still something that I owe the committee to move forward, but have not yet done that. Andy, is there any update from Plan Commission on any kind of urban ag ordinance changes?
So I was not at the meeting last one. I think it was last Monday.
Mhm.
Did they vote on changes to anything, Brian, that you're aware of?
So right now, there was support behind amending the ordinance to allow up to a combination of 6 total chickens or ducks within the village. So that is moving along to the next phase, which is going to be a public hearing. The committee did not support that night moving forward with a goat ordinance within the village. So right now it's just the modification of the up to 6 combination of chickens and or ducks. And then there will be a public hearing, and I just sent the amended language from that chapter of our village code to our village planner and attorney to kind of review and get it prepped so we can take it to the next step, which is that hearing.
Was there any changes to owner occupied housing being the only folks in the village who would be able to apply for a permit?
Owner occupied, I think it was a requirement for owners only. Is that what you're saying? If you own the property, that's who it was going to be written to be allowing that. And then the permit process, I think initially they had something where it was potentially up to 5, maybe like a $50 5-year provision, and then they just amended that to just go back to the $10 annually for the permitting process versus the bundled 5-year option on that front. So just for consistency in how we administer it within Village Hall.
Yeah, and so those are some of the things that I'd like to suggest that we change or update or improve, at least our recommendations coming from our committee, because 6 isn't a whole lot, especially if it's ducks and chickens. And it sounds like, Andy, it sounds like the recommendation that basically we want renters to be able to have chickens. And it sounds like that was not approved. Did I understand that correctly?
That's the way it sounded, Brian.
That's my understanding of how it's going to be written.
I thought I wasn't there. I missed the meeting, but I did read the prep for the meeting. I just couldn't make it at the last minute. But I understood at least what was written down is that owners of a building could apply for the rent on the renter's behalf. Right. So like if somebody owned a building, they're renting it out to, Joe was renting Jill, Joe could apply as long as the owner knew about it. I didn't think that it had to be owner occupied.
Okay, Kevin, let me double check. I thought it was owner.
Owner and occupied.
It maybe that is true. Maybe I am overlooking that fact. I'll confirm that. I'll let you know.
All right, because that was, I know, one of the questions that I had for that, to confirm that, and that's the way I read it, but I
Mhm.
could be wrong.
Kevin, I know that you have experience with ducks. What do you have a recommendation, or do you have any ideas about number of ducks that, like chickens, do you want to keep a certain amount together? It's good for
Yeah.
them. Any idea about ducks?
No, I mean, I don't have a real scientific, we had a dozen or more when we had them. Slowly got dwindled by weasels and raccoons, but we had a dozen or more at most of the time. So I can't give you a number that I would recommend. I'm sure they're like chickens as far as social. And I know that Jay, I ran into Jay the day after, and he did say that there was a pretty compelling argument from some young girl that there was, 6 chickens was definitely something that they were for. I think what they're worried about is 6 and 6 would be 12, and those kind of numbers, I think, is what he noted they were concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will still make good on the research, on my promise to do some research and come up with some recommendations that I'll share with this committee that we can agree on or debate via email, and then send it on to Plan Commission or maybe the full board. I'm not sure where that would go, where it would make the most sense.
The hearing is in front of the Plan Commission, right, Brian?
I believe so. Correct.
Yeah, this would be a zoning change, and therefore it'd go in front of the Plan Commission.
Is there a date for that hearing yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
The next meeting would be the first Monday in June. Our next meeting would be the first Monday in
Right.
June. I'm on Plan Commission now, again.
Oh, you are, Kevin. I didn't realize that. Oh, okay.
But I
Cool.
missed last meeting, so it doesn't do us any good right now.
Okay,
Sorry.
cool. I'm going to move us along to a couple of other just priorities within our sustainability plan. Well, actually, does anybody have any other updates or thoughts on this urban ag ordinance and ways that we can move this ahead?
I would just say that it's improving. It may not be getting to points where we really would want it to be, but it is heading in the right direction. So let's not get too down in the dumps that we're not making improvements.
Yeah, and maybe I jumped the gun a little bit on my end. I think about the time I saw that letter that was sent to the Plan Commission from the local resident girl, I can't remember her name. That's when I was like, well, now's a good time for me to advocate for some of these changes as well. So that's just kind of how it naturally happened. But I like the idea of getting all of our ducks in a row, no pun intended, to prepare for all of this. Behind like a formal letter and some formal communication and recommendations is definitely the way to go. But because then we can back it up with basically our prep and research that we prepared for the Plan Commission.
Cool. Great.
And sorry, guys, I lost my connection and I couldn't get back in the meeting. So where are we?
We were sharing our
Sustainability
deepest,
plan?
darkest secrets.
Dang it.
And
I
you
missed
were
them
up
all.
next.
Well, there was one time at scout camp.
So we were just wrapping up the urban ag ordinance, the conversation there, and I'm renewing my pledge to do some research and make some recommendations to our committee so we can get on the same page and then share that with Plan Commission. And there will be a public hearing in front of Plan Commission in June. So
Okay. of which Kevin's a member now.
Yes. Yep. The next priority that we talked about, we talked about, actually, this is a little different probably, establishing a water retainage project on 14 acres on Brewery Creek. We wanted to circle back with you, Brian, so it's great that you are staffing our committee. We applied for a grant and didn't get it. And this I think we thought was going to be maybe an easier lift, because we were applying for a grant and thought if we got grant funds, this would be kind of a softball. But without that funding, I'm not sure if there's any way to move this forward still. And this is really about kind of resilience and flooding, flood prevention. I don't suppose there's anybody Brian, is this something that Bill talked to you about as he was transitioning out, or have you had any conversations with Bill?
I haven't had an opportunity to speak with Bill directly. What I have been gifted is a giant document of all the various projects that have either started or semi-finished, of which it is a very large document. So some of these things I have had an opportunity to speak to Mike or Jay a little bit about as some inquiries have come across email or people have called. But honestly, I have not. This is another one that I don't believe I've had much, if any, conversations about thus far. But it's probably one of those various things that's in my list of potential projects, either underway or maybe to soon resume being on the radar.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. And I'm wondering if it might be something that CARPC could be talking about when they're talking about the green infrastructure plan. It could be related. So maybe we just kind of table this one and the working with CARPC priority for now until we talk to them at a future meeting.
And I don't know if they would be at liberty to, Mike, to talk about, partnerships or where they've seen communities land grants related to these types of projects. That might be a good referral point, just as a mental note that we can do a little bit more research on. But that might be another thing we want to ask him about.
Yeah, this is one that, Brian, being sensitive to your long list of a big stack of projects, that I think is probably even better suited to CARPC maybe, but for sure Vanderwall and our engineers and our consultants. So next time you talk to them, because they are in tune with what grants are going around when they're going around. They're writing, weirdly, but they write competing grants for communities along their in their portfolio. And so we should be one of those, and we can give this, if they see a grant, we could give it up to them, they can write it.
Okay.
14 acres seems very specific. I was wondering if anybody could just tell me where that number came from. I'm sorry.
You want me to or do you got it?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I actually don't know. I can't remember that one.
As part of the development that is Cedar Creek side at St. Francis or whatever, the new development up there, east of County Trunk Highway P, the village acquired land, sort of forced in a way the landowners to sell to the developer. The developer then gave to us as part of the mitigation process, and then we actually purchased some of that as well, I believe. And it's basically going up creek on County P, from P where the creek crosses P, and it would be creating a wetland and some stream remeandering to slow that whole watershed down before it crosses County P. And there would be there was a plan for a trail to be on part of this, some berming, etc. A pretty elaborate process to help slow water. And then and this grant that we applied for wouldn't have covered it all, but would have covered a good chunk of it.
Yeah, thanks for the history.
So right now the village owns that 14 acres and is doing nothing with it. So there'll be some pressure some days to use that acreage in some way, shape, or form.
Kevin, can you say again where it is?
East of County P, so going north out of town. As you pass the new subdivision on the left, right, the creek side, what are they called, creek side? Anyways, there's a culvert under the road there.
Okay.
That culvert and the new development has their own water retention process. The water is coming south, will hold up and then flow into the creek that's behind there, part of Brewery Creek. Melissa, you know this all too well. Brewery Creek can move pretty fast. That creek crossing, that's what it's called, creek crossing. There we go. Of County P, just upriver from that is, or the right side as you're going up, is 14 acres. Kind of a, if I recall, it's sort of a triangular trapezoidal shape. If you want, I could probably pull up a map and show you.
No, I think I can picture it. That's helpful. That's great. Okay. So let's table those two priorities. Any more discussion for a future meeting, especially when we can invite Mike Rupiper in from CARPC to join us. The next priority is around updating the light ordinance. Michael had hoped to join us, but he is unable to join us tonight, but he is working on some research. He presented, I think, so Steve, Andy, you weren't on our meeting last month, but he presented on some research. And actually, Kevin, you weren't either. Was it just me and John? And
I think it was
Brian and Michael was there, and Michael presented on some proposed changes or some some things that we could be thinking about. So we're not quite ready to be at the point of recommendations, and the whole idea is how do we move toward more LEDs, which are really super energy efficient, but how do we do it in a way that doesn't impact wildlife and other biological rhythms that seem to be impacted by the type of light, particularly like the blue light that LEDs are producing. So he will be preparing some more research and sharing some of that out over probably next month.
He's pretty interested in the dark sky and light spillover, I know, as well, which we really could do better at. If you've ever been up on the bluff at night and looked down across Plains and how pretty it is, we have so much light that's spilling up into the air. And I'm pretty sure this is I think this is Michael's, one of his pet projects, and I think it's great. And we've got somebody who really knows a lot about it. So I'd look forward to hearing from them again.
Yeah, on at the last meeting, Steve, he put together, it was included in the packet, but his presentation was pretty helpful. He kind of walked through some pictures that he had taken of the community at night and different designs and what an impact it made, and how just talking to building owners made a huge difference. So how willing people were to make changes once it was pointed out to them.
That's great.
So he'll have some more research to share, but that packet from April does have some pretty good stuff in it.
I have a quick anecdote on this topic, though. We have right outside our house here, there are a bunch of poles flagged. I talked to Jerry Gray, said they are going to be replacing poles. That is, MG&E will be replacing poles. And I said, oh, good. Then they're going to replace all the fixtures on top. And he said, no, they wouldn't. That right now the plan is to remove the old sodium vapor, put up a new pole, and put the sodium vapor right back up. Have you heard this at the board level, Andy? No. Yeah, so I'm looking into this. I'm looking into this from a because of this, like, it's like really personally hitting me. But then I'm like, as a planning and looking at it from the sustainability committee, like, well, what? This is a perfect time to put up a new fixture. So Brian, I don't know, maybe you can speak to that, or maybe you can help me. Like, I don't know where to go with this information from what Jerry said. So
yeah, I can talk. I can make a note to speak with Jerry about it. I don't know how the decision making process works with something like that. I know there were some issues about what I was kind of brought up to speed on, just some issues, and it might have been Michael actually that was looking into how subdivisions and MG&E in particular, and who owns some of the poles, and when is it officially the village's responsibility to take ownership and things like that. And or are some of the ones that we have even ours that we thought were ours. So I think there was a lot of work being done to kind of look into that. And I want to say it was Michael, if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of doing some of the research, the legwork on that one.
And that's
I
about
can
ownership.
make a note to reach out.
Right. So that's about ownership and who pays. But I mean, this is like, okay, you're replacing a pole, replace the fixture, because no matter who is paying, it's going to be cheaper, more efficient, more cost effective, better for, you know, the environment to use less energy if we're changing over to LED. So that's less so about who's paying, but it's about like, okay, while you're doing this, let's not have to go retroactively replace a fixture in a few years. So anyway, Brian, if you could maybe ask Jerry about that, where
Sure.
how the decision's being made, whether or not to replace when we are the LEDs when we're replacing the poles, if that's MG&E or a village decision, if it's a cost issue or what. Like, I think we should have this discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, glad that you flagged that, Kevin.
Yeah, I would sponsor a light. Let's
Yeah,
sponsor a new cool
Really,
light.
that's what it is. I'm not even kidding you. I
Yeah.
thought the same thing.
I mean, what are they? What, $200 maybe? I mean, I'm sure they're more than we think,
I'm
but
sure they're more than we think. Yeah, but if it was $500, I mean, if that's really what I call, like, ask
Yeah.
the question. Let's see.
Yep.
So, split the cost with the village, whatever it is.
Great. That's great. I think we have time to dig into one or two more priorities and see if we can get them a little further down the field. So this next one is around developing a process for how sustainability should be considered in the decision-making processes and committees and village board and by employees. This is kind of a big one and could be pretty multifaceted. So first I'll just pause and see if anybody has experience with, is there something we can steal from another community? Anybody know?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything in other communities. I just know that this is one of those things like communication in my work. Like, communication is involved with every facet of what we do. I think sustainability can and should be involved with every facet of what the village does. But how do we have those tendrils to reach out? And I don't know the answer.
Exactly. I met this morning with Kathy Kuntz. Kathy Kuntz is the kind of the I forget her title exactly. She's like the climate director for Dane County. And when Dane County passed their climate action plan, she and Keith Riopel worked together to do that. But she talked about Middleton, how Middleton is quietly kind of under the radar getting a lot of stuff done. And one thing that they have done is to qualify for TIF funding in Middleton, you have to do certain sustainability, meet certain sustainability requirements. And and they can do that because it's TIF funding, and that's one of the, they've just decided. And because there's only one planner in Middleton, it all goes to this one person. And so there aren't multiple people making decisions, and then wires can't get crossed. And it's all like a kind of a simple streamlined process. It goes to that one person. When she gets a request for TIF funding, she says, tell me about your sustainability goals. What are your plans for making this a green project? And then they have to make that pitch. And so it's to this point about like, what are some processes and systems to make sure that this gets woven in? That is something that, we could be considering, but it could be a whole lot bigger. It could be checklists for committees and I don't know, lots of other things, but that's something that I wanted to offer up.
That's really great.
Yeah, thanks.
I think there's a really easy step that I just put down on the Excel file. Brian, since you're in contact with our contractors and our consultants, I don't even know if they have our sustainability plan. I would bet they don't. So Vanderwall and the folks at is it Johnson Block? Is that who we're using now? For all of our consultants should have it.
Okay.
Which reminds me, yeah, I mean, there could be opportunities like that. I'm so glad that you said that, Kevin, just like putting the word out. So another hot tip that I got is in Eau Claire, they are toying with the idea of they're exploring some all electric new subdivisions. And the way that they're doing that is they can't change, like state building code. So they're not requiring that new developments be all electric, but they are talking to developers who are interested in building all electric. And in that way, and we've talked about this on our sustainability committee, is could we find developers who would be interested in building the ways that we're interested in it, and go that route rather than making any kind of requirements. So and that is just because, that kind of conversation only comes up because we're using our sustainability plan and we're talking to people who are interested in building and doing things in our community. So sharing out our plan and talking to interested developers, sharing it with them is really important.
Yeah.
You
And then I
mentioned,
would just say we send Andy to every one of those committee meetings with the plan in hand and a megaphone.
I'm in. I'm all in.
Banner drops.
You mentioned it briefly, but my head went right to like some sort of, I don't know if it's a checklist or where we can like give different proposals like a sustainability score, and then the village can use that, or the board can use that to whether or not to approve various developments or projects that are coming through based on the criteria that we sort of parceled out, and whether or not it gets an A+ for sustainability or some other score there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder, Andy, if we couldn't use some of the criteria that we used when we developed our plan. We had kind of 3 or 4 criteria that we considered, and we gave it a score based on how it measured up against those criteria. And so we wouldn't have to create anything from whole cloth if we were to do that.
I like the fact it's objective. It's something people can say, oh, here's what they're after. Here's what I could compete against or on. We're good at this. So I like that. A little rubric that, hey, if you want to build here, you want to develop here, this is where the community is going, hopefully.
Would you like me to reach out to the planner in the city of Middleton to see if they have anything similar in place right now, if that's something that they're doing as part of their TIF?
I think that's a great idea, Brian. Yeah, they probably have something in writing that we can reference and maybe adapt.
The difference is they're using their TIF. We just have it on the books. The reason I'm not on the board anymore.
Speak freely, Kevin.
Still be measured a little bit. The other thing is the main decision tool that we use as the village is the budget. And so if we can somehow tap into the budget and look at the budget from a sustainability standpoint, I try to think about when the best time is for that. When the budget comes out, it is draft, and it comes out in pieces, and maybe that's a good time. Ideally, it'd be done beforehand, because if we want to do something that say costs more, it's always tougher to go up in a budget than it is down. But I think that might be logistically impossible. So when the budget comes out, I think maybe this committee should sort of follow, right? That it comes out at a board meeting. The next meeting we talk about what just came out, and if there are anything that's in the budget that we would suggest a change to from the sustainability standpoint, we would do so. Things like road maintenance comes to mind, tire tax, wheel tax, which we were talking about at one of the other committees. All these things. So I think there's a way to do it. It's a big job, though. I'll have to warn you. Budget. Right.
So are you volunteering to do it? Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that.
I am volunteering to try. How's that? The first one, when it comes out, let's try it. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, then my idea is.
Yeah, we can collectively, digest all that.
So speaking of the budget, there are federal infrastructure dollars that some communities that have full-time staff that can be dedicated to going in for federal grants will have a better opportunity at getting. But there are, various pots of money coming out through the infrastructure bill, is there any way that we can, Brian, do you have any, I don't know, any inroads working with other communities to put in a shared kind of a collective federal grant request, or any ideas how we might be able to use that money for sustainability?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. I have not yet looked into any shared like grant opportunities or collaborations with other municipalities. I'm still meeting, neighboring community leaders and stuff at this point. What I can tell you is we were notified. Well, the state, all municipalities in the state were notified, and this is just kind of a microcosm of what I've seen recently in terms of how the state and federal grants are being handed. So that bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's a lot of things that are getting funneled out right now. And the most recent one, about a week and a half ago, I want to say roughly, there was a all points bulletin given out by the Wisconsin DOT related to a carbon reduction grant. And it was basically, it gave the monetary amounts that the state had for this funding. It said your grant proposals must be submitted, and it gave like 1 week.
Yeah, I know. They're usually like ridiculously short turnaround, and
Yeah,
for
so
a huge lift.
Yeah, it's very time intensive, and there's a lot of things that they wanted information on, like, well, what is going to be the carbon footprint reduction if we submit a proposal, and what fleet vehicle are you comparing the reduction to if we phase that vehicle out? So our Parks and Rec director, Mike Axon, we did get we got a grant submitted. So we did put one together. We worked on it. Mike was the primary person that was in charge of it, because we were trying to get we tried to aim high and try to get 2 possible vehicles, one being an actual vehicle for the parks department, and or like a electric motorized carts that they could use for like transporting supplies to and from some of the parks related to like baseball events or the pool and things of that nature. So we got that submitted last Friday before the deadline. But that's just kind of how things have been coming up. There isn't a lot of heads up as far as, now get your plan in place, because you've got 6 months to prepare. It's been like you hear about it the week before and it's due the following week, and yeah, regardless of, hey, I've got a board meeting, I have a plan, like things that you're preparing for, or I'm doing 5 meetings with other people. Today I met with a representative from Congressman Pocan's office, who I had worked with in Merrimack prior to arriving, just to kind of give him the heads up. Hey, I'm here. He was very, very good and worked with me before. And the primary discussion was just like, do you have a read on where some of the grant opportunities are coming from right now, or some of the things in the future? Not necessarily targeting sustainability, but this was more with an eye to like perhaps the future village hall, and police station, but that in and of itself, we're trying to target sustainable solutions for energy and things like that. So I think it could tie in very nicely to that. But I'm trying to work as many different things as I can in the midst of all the other things that you're trying to keep tabs on.
I would put some of the onus back on our planners and our consultants too. We wrote letters of support for 2 other communities for some of these grants, and both of them were being written by, one was by Vanderwall, and one was another planning company, Mead and Hunt.
Okay.
So, they're writing them for West Baraboo and, or the other one, like Cornell or something like that. So, we got to pay them, but to write it, and there's no guarantee you get it, and that's their sort of bread and butter. But if we don't have the time, they have, we could throw some money at it. That can be a better option.
Kevin, do you know if they can do any prospecting, or because sometimes these firms can actively go out and look for federal grant opportunities, and then And then they're also just, sometimes they're just good at writing the grant,
Yeah.
filling out the applications, but they're
Yeah,
coming out.
If you pay them, they'll do anything. So, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of how much we want to budget for them.
Mhm.
So I think in some of these, I mean, if we can just budget anything for them to write the grant, and
Mhm.
maybe that's on the sustainability committee too. If we're asking them to do this work, maybe we got to go out and find funding, add-on funding for
Mhm.
them to do the work.
Well, I'd say it's something worth us talking about and thinking about. There are going to be, I would imagine, many opportunities, and this,
Mhm.
the feds want to get the money out to local governments, and they want to see more energy efficiency. They want to see renewables. They want to see transit. They want to see bikeable communities. We have a lot of potential for federal funding and I think that if we don't, there was some interesting research that came out. Headwaters Economics in Montana put out some research about the counties across the country that are going to be best suited for going after federal funding. And something like 68% of counties in the Midwest don't have the capacity. And so we're going to get outcompeted by counties on the coast going after these federal infrastructure dollars, and the Midwest is going to get left behind if we're not, proactive in trying to figure out how we can go for those federal dollars. So if there's anything that the Sustainability Committee can do to support that, or any creative ways that we can figure out how to go after federal dollars, the money's there and they'd like to distribute it, but we're going to get outcompeted if we don't try to jump on it.
Melissa, was that an article or a
There's a
post?
report
Is it
by
something
Headwaters.
we could have access to? Or is
I
that
could
sort of
forward it to you.
within, yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
It came
That's,
across my desk for work, and but I can forward it to you.
yeah, if you're
Headwaters
not
Economics. Yeah. Let me make a note.
violating any contracts or anything. But yeah, I think that's a amazing point. I mean, there's so many more places that have the infrastructure intact to just do this all day, every day,
Yep.
I can
Well,
barely.
Dane County does have the infrastructure. Let's not forget, we're a piece of that county. And
Yeah, good point,
we can
Kevin.
glom onto them. They just released the America's Beautiful, whatever funding too. And that's something that the counties can go from 1 to 5 million, or the state might have to put in for that. And then the counties are going to get the second tier, which is, I think, 1 to 2 million.
And I
And
think
we can be part of that. CARB-C can be part of
Right.
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think the county has to officially, because it's municipality. The nonprofits aren't able to apply just yet, but we will be.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, you're right. Dane County is one of the counties, 68% probably won't have the capacity, but Dane County will be in that, 32% or so that does have the capacity. I think for us, it's important to link up with Dane County and let them know that we're here and we're ready to work with them, and try to, in any way that we can, help them complete these applications to try to get more federal dollars. So I'm noting the time. It's 7:01 and I want to wrap us up here. So we will continue on our next call to work through some of these other priorities and figure out how we can get them further down the field. We did not have a chance to talk about the Village Hall police station research that Jay Langfeld approached us about last month, but because this is a different group of people except for Brian and myself, I'll say that Jay attended our meeting last month and asked the Sustainability Committee to do some research. He made a point of saying he does not want recommendations from the committee. He would like us to conduct research and give some ideas, but not recommendations about what we can do to make the police station and Village Hall more sustainable. And I think he's probably, when he says sustainable, I suspect he's really looking at money, at dollars, and ways to reduce the costs. But that's something that we'll have on a future call discuss. But any questions on that or any points on that folks want to make?
You anticipate that it's going to get added to the next agenda then? Yeah.
Yes. Well, yep.
The ask sounds fuzzy to me, but I did miss the last committee meeting, so
It's
Be a
not
long
fuzzy,
process.
Steve.
I think
It's not
the-
fuzzy. And you mean
The
it is
ask will
fuzzy.
change over time.
Okay.
I'm confident of that.
Okay. So do we need to discuss prep about that here in advance of?
Yeah, I guess so. So what I would say, and it was on tonight's agenda, and we're gonna push it off to next month. But his request is that we do some research to give some ideas about how the village hall can be more sustainable. He in particular suggested that we consider like LEED certification, but without the actual certification. And I forget how he phrased it, but not an official certification, because he says that's where the costs come in. But could we build to LEED specs without going through the formal process of certification, so we don't have to pay as much?
Mhm.
So he's looking at things like that. When I asked, because he had a couple of buckets that he wanted us to look at, like energy, I think, and water. When I asked him, can we think beyond that? Like, can we suggest or do research around building in electric vehicle charging station infrastructure? He was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So that's an example of the kind of thing that you can suggest or do research around. So it is kind of fuzzy. I think they're just looking for some ideas right now, early on.
And is there was talk of a website for this to sort of track and follow along? I don't see it on the website now. Is that something that's still being discussed? That tracks the village hall, what stage we're at? No.
I don't know, Kevin.
No, there isn't right now. And I think it's because it's all still in the very formulative stages.
Yeah, I think this committee, we could probably start to, dream a little bit, but I think we might be more of a reactive committee once we start seeing plans and ideas and, molding the clay as opposed to, putting the blocks down. So
maybe, Kevin, he had indicated that he's, well, I don't know, because I'm not sure, actually. I don't know where things are.
7:05, so let's be respectful of your kid's time.
Cinderella. You better call it.
Yeah, Ella's gonna turn it into a pumpkin. Okay,
my.
so I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:05.
Steve motions to adjourn.
Kevin seconds.
Thanks, Kevin. Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thanks for all your work, everybody. I appreciate what you do. Good conversation, and we will be in touch. And I'll talk to you again next month.
Great meeting, everybody.
Hey, Melissa.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hey, Brian, Calvin stopped by after you guys came over by our office. And
yeah, he mentioned he was going to do that. That's great. I was wondering if he had a chance to catch up with you. So very
he did,
cool.
and he came in. I think he was just planning on saying hi, but I'm like, hey, what about this? What about that? He's like, I better check into those for you. So